Has anyone tested anyone else's virtual world from the first assignment? Yeah, you did do that? Yeah, so that kind of play testing, you might find people use your world differently than you expected, but maybe on Thursday we can test each other's worlds a little bit more. Okay, for now, I want everyone to fire up the Unity Hub. Okay, let's do some real coding now. All right, so I've already done this, but I've got a project called Coding Practice. Okay, so if you're going to make this, you'd go on New Project up here. Then you'd go on 3D URP Core, the one we normally use. And then call your project Coding Practice and then fire it up. Okay.
We can rename a project, can't we?
Yeah.
It's not practical.
It's not very intuitive how to do that, really.
Oh yeah, that's a South African one. I was like, yeah, I love this.
Okay, has everyone got an empty project in front of them?
Loading.
Still loading? Tell me when it's done.
Okay.
Ready? Okay, so I saw when you put your hands up, quite a few of you have done some coding already. So this first few bits might be a bit boring for you. But you know, that's great that you've done some, and we'll be expecting some cool stuff in the assignments. But for those who haven't done, don't worry. Okay, everyone has to start from somewhere. So I'm going to put these on Canvas afterwards, but they're not quite on there yet. They're just on there for me. But I'll just run through what this is. So yeah, if you want to make a VR application, I think coding is going to be, well, I've put essential there. I'd say almost essential. It depends on what you want to make. If you want to make something that's interactive, then you're probably going to have to code to some degree. I think like a bit like Seb's car analogy, I think being able to code is like being able to drive in Wales. Okay, so you could get public transport, but it's slow. You're not in control. If you drive, if you code, you can go wherever you want and you're in control. Okay, so it's very powerful to do it once you've got your license. All right. So programming really is all about just manipulating data. Yeah. So everything in your app is made up of data. So if you've got some lights, the position of those lights is stored in data. The brightness of the light, the color of the light, it's all data. Yeah. Every little thing that you do is data. Okay. And really we're just pushing data around and organizing data essentially. And once you've kind of learnt the syntax of the language, you'll find that most of your problems are not like, how do I do this? How do I do that? It's like, what's the best way to organize my scripts and my code so that if I need to change my app in some way, I'm not going to have to like rewrite a load of code. Okay. But that will come later. Okay. So this is a bit pedantic, but I'm saying here, people use the terms programming, coding, and scripting interchangeably, and that's perfectly fine. And yeah, I encourage you to do that. But there are kind of slight differences, I'd say. So programming is the most general kind of term. So it doesn't really matter how you're doing it, but you're just telling your computer to do something, usually in the form of code. But if you're using Unreal Engine, which is probably the second most popular engine for VR development, a lot of what you might be doing would be called visual scripting or visual coding, where you're not really writing code line by line. You're kind of connecting nodes together. Has anyone used like a node editor like that? Nobody? Or one person? Okay. So for now, we're going to do traditional scripting, but later in the course, we will do a bit of visual scripting as well. Okay. So, and then I've separated coding. Coding is like, programming through code, I guess, in a specific language. And then scripting, in kind of game development, where I'm most familiar, scripting would be a kind of subset of coding where you're really coding the behavior of your app. Okay. So in Unity, the hardcore programmers who work for Unity, they've done all the behind the scenes work of this is how we render a cube on the screen. This is how this works, the physics works, the audio. They've done all that for you. And then we're really just adding these scripts at the last stage. And that is what drives our behavior of the app. So that's what kind of, when you say scripting, you're normally scripting or coding like the behavior of your app. Okay, so like I said, most of the course will be code-based, but we'll do a little bit of visual. This tends to be artists and who kind of prefer the visual way, whereas other people prefer kind of traditional line-by-line code. So you might see at the bottom here, I've got little icons on my my taskbar. I've got all three code editors that are the most used ones in Unity. So we've already been using Visual Studio. That is the default one. That's the main one, and that's the one I recommend to use. Some of you who've got a bit of coding experience already, you might prefer to use VS Code. Okay, so VS Code is much more lightweight and modern. And you've got lots of extensions. It can do nearly everything that Visual Studio can do. But Visual Studio is actually made for like the kind of build process as well. Whereas VS Code is just for kind of coding. We're not going to use that today. Maybe when you've got a bit of experience, you can use that. And also when you've got a bit of experience, as I was saying, you get all the free software when you're a student. We've got this other program here called JetBrains Rider. And this is what a lot of professional developers would say is the best scripting or coding editor. it's good for Unity, it's good for Unreal. But again, we're not going to worry about that today. So we're just going to look at Visual Studio. So here I've got a example script. I've got a screenshot of it here, but it'd be better if I could show you in my project. So if my project wakes up, I must have not got it here. So I'll just remake the example script. Okay. So in fact, no, I won't bother doing that. But hang on a minute. I'll just get a screenshot. Oh, where are we? Coding. Example script. I'll just zoom in. I know it might be hard to read back there, so I'm going to zoom in all the way. So this is my Visual Studio. I like to use dark mode. Okay, so we've got this example script, and it's C#, and we know it's C# because it's got the C# extension there, .cs. So all our C# files are .cs. Okay, and there's two kind of bits to this really. I guess there's the namespaces up here. Okay, it says using system.collections and then using Unity Engine. Okay, you don't really need to worry about namespaces for now. They're just a collection of scripts and codes that you're going to use. Okay, by default, these two are already there, so you don't need to worry about that. And then this is the main part of this script. This is the class. So the class starts on line 5 and then it ends on 26 here. So these are your line numbers. These are going to be useful because I might say to you, oh, look, on line 18, you need to do this. So you look here for line 18. And there's all tools you can use to jump around to lines and things. But this is the main body, okay? And it's a class. So a class is a kind of data structure in C# that we use primarily. Everything you do will be kind of built up of classes. All right. And within the class, we've got a few different things going on. Okay. We've got 3 methods. So the methods are these bits here, 1, 2, 3. So the methods are start, update, and example method. So you might notice that start and update are blue, and this one is kind of yellow. Okay, so this is because the blue ones have kind of special functionality, and you might be able to read here, it says Unity message. Okay, so these are built-in messages that come with Unity for us to use. Okay, whereas this one here, I just made up, and it's one that we're going to use. Okay, so you're going to be using these built-in messages or methods a lot. That's just the way we do it. So these are our methods, and then these are our variables up here. So I've got 2 variables. I've got this one here called number of students, 20. That's this year, we got 20. And then I've got another variable called location, and I've put that as Swansea. Okay. So this is typically how we organize a class. We put the variables on top, and then we do the methods. Okay, so if we look at our own editor now, if you look at your code editor, or Unity, sorry, right, it should have opened with sample scene. Just delete that. So sample scene, you have these 3 objects by default. Okay, so I'll just talk a little bit about game objects first. So everything in the hierarchy, everything you made for your virtual world was made up of what's known as game objects. Okay, so these are like the building blocks within Unity. So everything is a game object, basically. So to create an empty game object, the most simple game object, you saw me do this the other day. We go plus create empty, and it will rename it game object. So I click on game object, I can see it's just got one component, and that's the transform. So yeah, the way Unity works is it's a component-based architecture. So every object is a game object, even if I rename it, whatever, if I click go on a cube, okay, it says cube, but it's still a game object. That's what all of these are. So another one, audio source, still a game object. Yeah, all of these game objects. If I minimize these, so you can see my game object is completely, it's just got one component, transform. The cube, it's got a few more components. And then the audio source has got one extra, which is the audio source component. Okay, so all we're doing with our objects is just adding components on when we need them. And we can add as many as we want. And again, it's about organizing things the way that makes sense to us. All right, so I'll delete these. So if I've got an empty game object, yeah, I want to add a script to this game object. I'm going to do our first bit of coding. Okay, so lots of ways you can create a script. What I do for now is go to assets, create C# script. Okay, and then automatically it will be in the rename mode. So you can type in what you want to call it. I'm going to call mine example script. So call it whatever you want, really, doesn't matter. Okay, now when you hit enter, Unity is going to compile that script and take a couple of seconds. And then you should hopefully see it in your project somewhere. Okay, it should be in the assets, in the root of the assets folder. Right. So you could double click it, but the way I prefer to do it is if you go up to here, go on assets, and then open C# project. This is just a more reliable way of opening your scripts. Sometimes Visual Studio or whatever program you're using can get a bit disconnected from Unity. So I like to do it this way. So I go on open. And if I do it this way, I can show you something else as well. So Visual Studio will automatically load in the last layout that I used. So we were using Git before, so I've got the Git changes over here. Because this isn't a Git repository, this is empty. Okay, this is an offline project at the moment. So what I can do to view all my scripts in Unity, I've got this other window. If I go on view, I've got all these things here. So hopefully you should have one called Unity Project Explorer. Okay, let me know if you've got that. You don't have it. Okay, doesn't matter. Well, we'll fix that later. But what this will do is basically filter everything in your Unity project and only show you your scripts. Okay, so that's very handy. Okay, but I'll show you how to fix that later. All right. Okay, so let's pretend I didn't have any of that then. So back in Unity, now I've opened that. Where's Unity? Yeah, I can double click that script I just made, example script, and then it should open in Visual Studio. So I'll make this a bit bigger. Okay, so when you do create a new script from within Unity, it will create this for you, this kind of format. So it's very similar to what I just showed you. You've got your namespaces again. You've got the name of the class, which by default is what you renamed it in Unity, yeah? So that's why it's called example script. It's because I called it example script when I created it. And this is important because this name here, example script, must be the same name as this here. So if I said something stupid like example script 2, okay. Let's go back to Unity. It's not really going to work now because these are not the same name. Okay, so I'll make sure these are the same as it was. And then by default, Unity gives you these two Unity messages. Okay. So we got start and then we got update. And like Seb said, leaving comments everywhere for you to read later is important. And because you might be new with Unity, Unity gives you these two methods, and it gives you these two comments which describe how these methods work. Okay, so we know that games and VR apps are made up of frames. Yeah, it shows 90 frames a second normally. And Unity is saying, so this method is called before the first frame happens. So when we press play, before anything happens, all the code in here will run. And then this other method is used once per frame. So every frame that's going in our game or app, this will happen maybe 90 times a second or a frame or whatever. Okay, so that's all you need to know for now. You just get these two default methods when you create a new script. Okay, so one thing to be aware of is these little curly brackets or the braces. So everything, if I put my cursor next to one of them, it highlights the corresponding one. If I don't have one of these, I'm going to have a bad time. Okay, because you can see here I've got the red squiggly line of death, which means there's an error. Okay, a lot of new programmers, they'll often have problems with their braces. Maybe they'll have one missing, or they don't have enough. So just keep in mind that if you've got one brace, say like here, yeah, it's going to break. You need two to correspond like that. Okay. All right. So that's enough of that. That's our example script. I've said what I want you to do on Canvas is write a message. Okay. So traditionally, new programmers, they write hello world. Okay. This is your first thing you do when you're learning to code. Okay, from 1978. And you just print the words. Okay, so the way we do that in Unity, okay, we use a built-in thing called debug.log. Okay, so I'll type it out here, debug. So capital D, E, you can see what Seb was talking about here. I got this menu pop up straight away. Okay, so this is IntelliSense, and this is kind of suggesting what I might want to do after I've started typing DE. Yeah, and then you can see also here, it's actually filling in the rest of my line for me, and this is Copilot. Okay, so if I hit Tab, and again, it's going to actually write that whole line out for me. So Copilot is good, but you might not have it today because you haven't signed up for that or anything. So I'm going to turn mine off somehow.
Yeah.
Oh, none of us have it. All right, let me just turn off my my thing for a minute. How do you turn this off again? Extensions, manage extensions. There we go. All right, so where are people at then? You've got a project. Yeah.
Visual Studio is just empty for me. It says that coding practice is open, but it's just empty.
Okay, so have you made a script? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Go to the script. Double click the script.
Yeah, I'll just open
Everyone's got the same thing. We have a few yours. No, let me try that.
I just have to go in file and then send it back and then find it. No, you did say that. It's in the. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's fine. The police are already in the file. If it's still there, I don't think that's still the file. I'm going to make the script as well. Oh, why is that? You can see. So it's so right now, so we'll go this work. I just never played this way. Yeah. Yeah. You don't have Unity project next door. No. I'm not sure. You probably should have all the okay. Oh yeah, okay. Well, actually, they should show up here, and that's what we're. I'd like to go to the search bar, but like the Windows search bar, and we there, and then you got installer.
Yeah, it's one way to do it, but it's not great.
How come it's not moving?
I think when Gareth or whoever installed this, we might have missed the checkbox. So yeah, let's go to the let's shut this down.
Yeah.
Modify. Just to get comes to some stuff.
One thing was every time you do this, and just this is the ones that are active.
Yeah, that might be it, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, you used to be covered with that one, so.
yeah, so we click on that tab, and then you don't need the Unity Hub.
This
You
one.
can
And
unclick
the
the Unity Hub.
This one. No, you're okay. One.
No, untick Unity Hub over it.
Untick that,
Yeah,
yeah.
we already got that, so we just
And then just modify it.
yeah.
Dragging the script.
Okay, I think when we installed this software, we might have missed a tick box. So if anyone whose script wasn't opening, if you go on the Windows search and look for Visual Studio Installer, we can open that. Okay, and then you can click on Modify. And then if you scroll down, you should see Game Development with Unity. So you click on that. And then hit Install or Modify. And then we should have those Visual Basic tools for Unity, which is that view that we were missing and some of that stuff. So I'm hoping that should fix it for some of you. I'll just wait for everyone to get that fixed.
This was confusing. We will just close. Yeah, I literally, I don't really have a choice. I need to wear my, I'm going to work after this. So. Yeah. Literally, Tuesday, Thursday, the only days I wear slacks. All the other days I wear jeans. Yeah, it's a color, isn't it? Slacks. Well, it is, you can think so, yeah. Oh, flowers, what I said. I usually say flowers, but flowers is jeans, it's not slacks, it's not like slacks. And you can say, oh, I'm sure the jeans are rich, like you say, I wear like, no, I say heights. Heights. What's that?
Yeah.
Yes, well, we're speaking sense. Right, okay, so now if technically we try and open it, it should work. Yes. There you go. So you press X now? X up on the right side. What's that? That's it. Yeah. No. It's all good. And then you can close that as well. Yep. And then if you double click on your first script.
Because otherwise, you can code but you won't get any of that.
That's all.
Helping you. Yours working?
Yeah.
Yours is not correct. Yours is correct. Yeah, my yours is correct. Yeah, yours is broken. See, when you type debug, yeah, that's what's happening. Yeah. So the way you know, you should be. It might be the way your laptop works. Okay, so all we can do, if you can set a knock ring. And then if you're going to use the coding programs, change it. And you'll really keep on time. And then click this button. And then do that again.
Oh, I just switched that and then remember the same thing. Well, that's not quite. When we're on there, the whole thing, yeah, whenever you set the program, you go stop there. It's just going to be taken out. And then one of these people want to find where the funding is. One of these and one of these right. And see that this one, they haven't think this will start. So I know that the problem is somewhere. That's how you do that.
But it should probably be. Yeah. Yeah, like. Yeah. Yeah, there's one way, this one. So you don't have the other thing as well, which is probably what it is.
Oh, you know. Do you really just logo?
So you just do the fact that
No, you can do it chips. Like, yes, if that. Yes, but practice. No, Dan, do you want that? Right, okay. I don't, because I want to buy a ticket. And I want to put it there. So I'm thinking, yeah. Oh, if you ever get there, we get. Yeah, if you ever get there. We do this up. I guess. It's everyone.
Yeah, but not as an outlier. I mean, what do you kind of get?
When I use an transport and I came over here, a little bit before, you know, make it. So when I graduate, where I am now, I probably earn more than I
Actually, that's good. Yeah. So.
Yeah, so I have a keyboard. I want to take down.
Yeah.
You are. Oh, I have a paper light. And back of that is quite new. I want to use football. Yeah, this is the iPad Pro. Yeah, then you can it's cute. I'm going to get paid and I'll buy it. And you hopefully just write right words.
Are you judging what they pay? You know.
Yes, whatever we have. I'm trying to get to all organized. Yeah, and then you can use it. So this is where I decide what I'm going to work for. So this I look on your things.
Yeah, this one, yeah. Basically, the C sharp. No, you're also not
working. Oh, it's not like yours.
It's coded.
Why is it all right? Is it right the same?
So we basically did install the C sharp bit, which we know is
Stop it.
yeah. So
Told you.
so
Jump ahead.
we installed the game development bit. So we didn't install .NET, which is actually C sharp, which is bit silly things. So
Deco.
Why are we downloading it?
Yeah, we need this to.
And then modify, yeah, I'm going to click on your.
Yeah.
5 gig, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I'm glad we're playing a game.
Yeah, yours was made right. So the way you know, if that is not green for the area, because you're not getting the sense. So if you shut that down, yeah.
It's like
And then you open the Visual Studio Store.
Back to Paris, you want new one, 10%.
Oh, well, this is gonna be.
Yes.
It's called paper light. So it feels like you're writing on paper.
No.
Yeah, the brand that makes them.
Yeah, this is the back end.
And keyboard. It's an Apple, I think it's smart keyboard here. No, it's just like iPhone. You can be passionate. Yes, yes. Want chocolate? No, I want to eat. Can I grab an extra one?
Oh, we done? Okay.
Sometimes it takes a couple of seconds,
Yeah.
but
Maybe.
yeah, everyone always said.
That's when the camera was your favorite. Yeah.
Not like.
Eating film. Yeah. Yes. And then, yeah, you only do this, so you do that, then. Sorry. You can have dogs.
I'm going to just move on because I know you'll be able to catch up on this bit. You can just yeah, and then reopen. So as I was walking around, I noticed a lot of kind of minor mistakes. Okay, so one thing I didn't mention, when you're creating scripts, yeah, we need to use what's called camel case. Okay, so I saw some people do a script like this. So they did example space script. Okay, computers generally don't like spaces, so we don't do that. Okay, we have no spaces, and you won't let me do that because I already got one, but yeah, no spaces, no underscores. Okay. And I saw other people do this. No, we don't do that either. Okay. Okay, we do capital for every word, start with a capital. Okay, that's just the standard way of doing it. Okay, so I'll rename mine.
Example and then capital script.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what to do.
Okay, and then again, if you're changing it now, you'd have to change it and the class name here as well. Okay, they need to match exactly. So I've made my script. I know that my Visual Studio is working correctly because this word here, mono behavior, is green. Okay, we saw some white mono behaviors. That's bad. We need it to be green. All right. So now I've got my finished script. I'm going to select my game object, and then I'm going to drag my script onto it like that. Okay. And then I'm going to save. I'm going to press play, see what happens. And if I go on the console, this is where we spit out those messages. I've got hello world. Okay. So what's happening here then? We've got our own class called example script, but we're actually using a different class here. So this debug class, if I hover over it, it's going to give me a preview. So I can see that debug is part of the Unity engine, and that's why we've got using Unity engine at the top. So that's how we get access to all this stuff in the Unity engine. So debug is a class that they've made with lots of helpful functionality, such as writing little messages to the console. So debug is the class, and then like we've got methods here, they've got a method inside of there called log. Okay. And the log method, if I hover over it again, I can see it takes in some sort of message. So that's what I've put here. And it's a text kind of message. So in C#, the way we do that, we need these quotation marks. And I'll talk about that in the next part. But for now, write a message like this and try and get it on your console. Okay.
My mono is not problem. It was like no
It
screen.
takes a couple of seconds.
Right, okay.
So put it inside your start method,
So the
inside of there. Well, not inside of there, sorry. In between the two.
here.
Yeah, on
the bracket.
the next slide. Next slide. There we go. In between.
Right, so you open the bracket
Yeah.
and then you go on the next line and you start writing
Yes.
whatever you want, and then you can close the bracket on the underneath line.
Yeah. So here the bracket's already there for you.
Yes, yeah, okay.
I like to see a way to just do it nice.
It's finished. Yeah, it's finished.
Still, oh, it's right.
You got space there. So hit F2. Got this thing now. You'll go green in a second.
That thing that was done, what happened to me? That one was this, there's another one who stood on the again. Yeah, because I was it? Oh, is that what was happened?
Yeah, sorry, this open that store again.
Do it then, it's none.
Oh, right, that's not it. So that is there. It's already there. Yeah, sorry. Sometimes it's not green. This is where you select what script editor you use. Hit regenerate. Hopefully, that's why I don't use it together.
Oh my god, I'm already doing the wrong one.
There we go. Yeah, so that's why I don't double click the scripts. I go up here, open. So let's write your first debug log. Oh, you do it.
Mine is not coming along.
So what you need to do is copy the format of this. So you see it says log, and then you've got a
Object message, right,
So
okay.
do a little bracket. I should put this on the screen actually. Sorry.
We don't have this here, do we?
No, sorry.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's like this. That's the kind of format. So debug.log.
Right.
Are we calling that on the screen? Not on this. Right.
Debug.log.
Yeah. Capital D.
Which one is a double wireless?
capital L, and then that's it. And then remember I said you need the quotation marks.
Don't argue with margin, right? Because I'm going to be doing
Okay, yeah, so quotation mark.
double.
Yeah, it will do that.
Is it?
The things you want to put it in there.
There's just one though.
Yeah, where's the other one? It's under 2 normally.
Right, okay, so.
Yeah, so you do that, and then you see it's already put 2 sets in there. So
Yeah.
You just need to type your
So
message.
then, right, okay.
Right.
And then semicolon on the end. You don't need to press enter, but yeah,
Then
it's
you,
fine.
it basically just adds another line.
So, yeah, Control S.
And then we go back to.
Yeah, Control S. Okay, Alt. You know the Alt tab?
Alt,
Yeah, and then tab.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
do that like a pro. There you go. Yeah, back to Unity. That's it. Yeah, back to Unity. Right. You want to maximize this. And then we're going to drag that script onto your empty game object. So yeah, select your game object. You use your mouse sideways. Undo that. Right, so you've got your game object there. So let's click on that.
Right.
So we're going to drag that script onto there. Yeah, now hit play. Okay, now you see down here, this element there. Click on that. This is your console.
Right.
So I want to dock the console somewhere. So if you move it, you would have them. So you click on that bit. And drag it. Yeah, there you go. So you want to keep it there. So, yeah, your program now.
Oh, that's
Okay.
that's easy. Well, we can do it, so.
Well done.
Right. You got log. You got log. Got it on this console. Good, good. So I've got this one. Everybody over here, you already programmers. Yeah, good. All right, let's move on then. All right, I want you to now, instead of putting it in start, I want you to put it in update instead.
Okay.
So you can do control, cut, or whatever. Just put it in update instead. So select it. Oh, that's another thing you can do. If you select, if you put your cursor online, you can press Alt up and down, and that just moves it down for you. So like that. Wee. Okay, that's a very handy one to do.
Oh, hell
This
yeah.
one.
So you double click, well, you just click and then, no, you need to highlight it. Then you press Alt, and then you go down, press down arrow, there you go. Whoop, that's it. No, so highlight it again. It needs to be between the. Down. No, down. That's it. In between, yeah. So Control S, Alt Tab. Yeah, Alt Tab.
Yeah, this one, yeah.
Yeah, let's tab.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Let's tab go. So, Alt first.
Hello.
So Alt first, and then tab. There you go. There you go. There you go.
Right. Alt first.
Then tab.
Then tab.
Yeah, I'll save you time clicking around. Okay, so other important things to note if you haven't done this before. Okay, do not change your scripts while you're in play mode. Okay, that will just mess things up. Okay, so if you want to start scripting, come out of play mode.
do whatever code changes you need to do, then go back to Unity. Normally, if it's a complex project, it'll just throw an error if you try that. Okay, so go back to Unity. Yeah, so yeah, like right now, press play. So you can see now on the console, it's happening every frame. Yeah? So it didn't happen once. Now it's happening every time because we're using the update method. Does everyone understand the update method now? You get it? Yeah. Oh no, that's fine. Yeah.
Plus 9999.
Yeah, so it's constantly happening.
Cool. You're in me. Yeah, exactly. You can add one as well. Yeah, that's fine. I did something wrong, so you can. Yeah, you can just drag it and put it like there where you have it. What? You missed something. Maybe I might be online. Yeah, put mine on. Oh, yeah.
Okay, we're moving on. We're moving on. Okay. So you can follow on the screen again if you want. We're looking at data types now. Okay. We've already used one kind of data type, but it's now time to do some more. Okay. I want you to all imagine you've been in charge of putting on a VR festival. Okay. People can come and try the latest VR games and technology. Okay. So the VR festival is going to have an entrance fee. People are going to have to pay money to go in, right? You're going to create a ticket system, okay, through a C# script, and it's going to hold stuff like the ticket price, the name of the customer, etc. Okay, we might need to keep track of things that change over time, like how many people are in the festival or something or whatever, right? So to store all of that data, okay, we're going to use variables. Okay, and these variables are going to be of different types. Okay, so like I said, the variables, we usually create them at the top of the script, and then we reference them elsewhere. Okay, so I'm going to make a weather app here, and you guys are going to make a ticket app. All right, so if I'm making a weather app, I'm going to need a variable to store the temperature. Okay, so I'm going to make a new script, right click here, C#, and I'll call it weather. Okay, so I got
create a new one, or should we just keep it over here?
I would create a new one, but you can just watch me if you want this bit. So I've got my weather script. So I need a number to store the temperature. Okay. So if I need a basic number in Unity, I'm going to use an int probably, which stands for integer, as in a whole number. Okay. So this is what that might look like. Okay. So first of all, if it's a variable, I need to first define the type. So the type here is int. Okay. As an integer. So in my C#, I'll go int. And we can see it's still auto completing this, but we'll just ignore that. So I'll do int. And then I need to think of the word. So it doesn't have to be temperature. It could be like, I don't know, the day of the month or anything, but it needs to be descriptive. Okay. So if you could do int t like that. but that doesn't really help anybody reading this code because they don't know what that is. Okay, so I will do temperature. Okay, and I'll just leave it like that for now. So here, what I've done is if I save this, and if I press play, it's just going to recompile. So I'll remove my example script with the dots, remove, and then I'll put weather up here. And if I press play, obviously nothing's going to happen because that script doesn't do anything. But what has happened is that my laptop has reserved, a tiny bit of memory to store whatever integer I'm going to place, holding this variable. Okay, so it's ready. So if I actually want to set that to something, because at the moment it's not set to anything, I need to do something slightly differently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it blank at the start, but then on the first frame, after I press play, then I'm going to set the temperature. Okay, so if we look at my thing here, so yeah, remember the semicolon, that's very important. Okay. So yeah, like I said, the int is a whole number, and it's known as a built-in or primitive type. Okay, we'll talk about the other kind of types, but this is a primitive type, and it shows up because it's a primitive type. It shows up as blue. Okay. Did you have a question?
Yes.
Oh.
So what does the semicolon do at the end of the temperature, for example, or like in general?
Semicolon is it's in many programming languages. It just tells the computer that's the end of this statement.
Okay.
It's like a full stop in English. Yeah. Okay. So back to my. So writing out in a line like this is called declaring it. Okay. Again, this is just programmer jargon. But that's, if I tell you to declare a variable, I just mean do this. Okay, write it out like this. Okay, so like I said, we're telling the computer to reserve a bit of memory to store whatever value it may have in the future. So if you don't give it a value for int, by default, it defaults to 0. Okay, so at the moment the temperature is 0. And if I want to set it to another value, I have to do an assignment. So we have these different, what they call operators in C#. And to assign it, the assignment operator is a little equal sign like that. Okay. So if I want to set the temperature to 30, I say temperature, assignment operator, or equals, temperature equals 30, semicolon. All right. Yeah, so I don't have to do that. So I'm going to do that here. So you'll notice now that because I've already declared temperature as an int, I don't have to write that again. I can just write temperature. Yeah. And if I write temperature, you can see that IntelliSense already knows what I'm talking about here. So I could just hit tab and it will do the rest of the typing for me. I don't need to be typing every little letter like T, E, M. Like I don't need to do that. I can just hit tab. Okay. But so if I hadn't declared it yet, say I'm going to say month or something, and let's just start typing month. It's not going to know what the hell I'm talking about because I haven't declared that variable anywhere. Yeah. So I'm setting the temperature to 30. Start typing temperature. Hit tab. It's guessing what I want to do. So I could hit tab again, but for the sake of it, I'll just type it out. So space, assignment operator, space, and then that's a bit hot for me. So we'll do 20 and then semicolon. So Fiona, you were right. You could not do spaces. The computer doesn't care, but it's just more readable for a human like that. Okay, so that's that. So something that I'm not mentioning here yet, we'll come on to later, but we have public and private modifiers. Okay, so all your data has an access level of modifier. So see, our classes are public. Variables can also be public and private. Okay, if you don't put anything in front of it, by default, it's private. So a lot of programmers, they like to explicitly say, yes, this is private, just so I know. Yeah. So interesting thing happens if you put it public. Okay. So I save it now. Go back to Unity. You can see temperature has now appeared here. So instead of setting it in code, like I'm doing here, I could just set it to whatever I want here. Okay. And that's because it's a public variable, right? If I get rid of this word, you'll see that it disappears. Okay, because I'm telling, I could be coding this VR app for other people on my team to use. I might not want them to set the temperature. So that's why I might make it private. I don't want them messing around with it here. If I'm a programmer, so you can see I've set the temperature to 20 on start. A very important thing to know here is I can check the private variables if I go into debug mode. Okay, so see the inspector, I right click the inspector, debug mode. I then get to check all those private variables. So if I hit play, that temperature is going to change to 20. All right. So as we go on, you're gonna see scripts with public and private. If you want to check the private when the app is running, go into debug mode. Okay, I'll come out of debug mode by going to normal. Okay, so that's how we've declared a variable up here, and then we've assigned that variable a value on line 12. All right. So what's next? Float. Okay, so temperatures are not typically whole numbers. Yeah. We might want to set the temperature like 20.5. Okay, if I try and do that here, C# is not going to like it. Okay, and it tells me there, it says I can't convert double to int, blah blah blah. I've got a data mismatch. Okay, because int types are whole numbers, but I'm trying to set it to something that's not a whole number. Okay, so what I can do, I can just change it to float. Okay, so I'll say float as in floating point number. Okay, it still doesn't like it. That's because if it's a floating point number, I need to put a little f on the end, like that. I don't really know why you need to do that. You just do. Okay, so a floating point number, a non-whole number. Yeah, that's this here. And interestingly, all of these numbers we've been messing around with here, these are floating point numbers. Yeah, so if you come later to code and set these things through code, like the position, then we'll be manipulating floats. Okay, so that's a float. So a bool, okay. A bool is another primitive type, very simple. It's basically just a true or false value, a Boolean. Okay. So here I've got an example of, your weather app. You might ask it if it's going to rain, or it might keep track of if it's going to rain or not. So I've declared here very, I've made it explicit what this bool does. Will it rain today? Okay. And if you remember, I said if we make a class, yeah, we always start with a capital. So capital E for example script, capital W for weather. If I declare a bool, see it's auto completing it again, but you can notice that we start our variables always with a small letter. Okay, so I'm going to type will, and then capital, it rain, capital today. Okay, so I've declared it. Now I want to do something with it. Again, if you declare it like this, it's going to have a default value, and the default value for bools is false. So what I can do here is, remember we did debug log for that message, hello world. We can also debug log other primitive types. So I can say debug log, debug.log, and that's really annoying now, but instead of putting that text in there, I can just reference the other variables. So I'll do bracket, and then I'll say, will it rain? Okay, so it's going to print the value of will it rain. It's either going to be true or it's going to be false, right? So as I said, we haven't set it to anything, so it should default to false. Okay. False. Okay. Now, if I set it true, will it rain today equals true, semicolon, save. Press play. Now it's true. Okay. So debug log can be used for messages or keeping track of values. If I go in debug mode again, you can see I now got a checkbox. So I click play. That checkbox is going to get ticked. All right. So debug log, debug mode, very, very important. Okay, so that's bools. Okay, that's just what I mentioned there. So we've already used strings when we said hello world. Strings are how we represent text. Okay. Not quite sure why they're called strings. They just are. So in my weather app, I'm going to use a string for the current location. So again, I'm going to declare another variable. I like to space them out a little bit. You could just do them all like that, but I like to space them out. I'm going to say string, another primitive type, if I can spell it, S string, and I'll say location. Okay, and then down here somewhere, let's get rid of these ones. Let's get rid of all that actually. Okay, I'm going to do debug. Oh, actually, first I'm going to set the location somewhere else. So space. And because it's a string, I need these quotation marks. So I'll say New York City. So at the start, the location was nothing. And then I've set it to New York City. Okay. So again, all we're doing is declaring and then assigning. So what else have I said here? No, nothing else to say there. Yeah, I mean, we could debug log it again, but I'm sure you get that by now. Okay. So let's look at operators. So we already looked at the assignment operator, which is the equals. Now we're going to look at addition. Okay. So you don't have to be like super maths wizard to be a programmer, really. But I'm sure you guys know how addition works. So I've got three numbers here, three whole numbers. I've got one called number. I've got one called A, one called B. So I'll just copy that out. So let's get rid of all this for a minute. So I'll do int number. And I'm not going to give that a value. And then I'll do int A. And here, I am actually going to set the value at the same time that I do the declaration. Okay, so you can do it in the same line if you want. Int B equals 10. So I've declared three variables. This one I didn't assign a value to. These two I assigned at the same time. So what if I want to add these numbers together? So here I said in the start, I said number, which is the first one. Assign the value of number to be that of A and B. Okay, so I'll say number equals A and B, debug log the value of number. Okay, so if my maths is good, that's going to be 14. So go back to my weather app, press play. 14. Excellent. Okay, so that's the addition. Can anyone guess what the next one is? Yeah, subtraction. Same thing. Okay, so instead of a plus, you just put a minus. Save that. Okay, -6. Great. And then we've got multiplication and division. So multiplication is the little star, which is on above your number 8 on your keyboard. Okay. And then division is just a /. All right. So I've got a little challenge for you now. Okay. Get used to those primitive types. But what I want you to do is make a new script for the festival that you're running. Okay, imagine we're making a ticket script. I'd said create a cube, rename it ticket booth. So this is typically what you do in Unity. We have kind of physical objects which represent, stuff in our world. And it's these physical things often that we'll add the scripts to. So I've said, call this the ticket booth. Yeah. And then the idea is that you'd make a ticket booth script and apply it on there. Okay, so your ticket booth script, it's up to you what data you want in there, but I want you to create variables you think will be useful, and such as the ticket price, the customer name. So use the data types we already used. And then in the start method, you can print these and mess around with operators. Okay, so let's give that a try. Okay, let's go. No, I will help you. So what you want to do, make a new script.
Oh, yeah, so, just pop the chunk up.
Sorry. So new script.